Hi, everybody. Welcome to Beneath the Calling podcast. I'm your host, Remington Cartee. This podcast is new. This is a new venture I am trying out. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in this episode. It is going to be our first episode. It will probably be relatively short just because it's just kind of about me and a little bit about background. And, I don't have a whole lot of dialogue to share with you today. But essentially what this podcast is for is entrepreneurs, business owners, musicians, artists, anybody who's had a dream and followed it. And bringing it to the people who, may be interested in that. If you've ever had the idea that you want to start your own business, or you got a dream or a passion or something that you want to take and do and make money from and, make a living off of something that you can enjoy every day. That's what this is for, is to bring you that encouragement, bring you that enlightenment, bring you some knowledge about different ways to do things and, just have conversations with everyday people and, really just get underneath the reasons why they do what they do and, what called them to do that. So Beneath the Calling is essentially just conversations with those people. These are just everyday folks and, what sets them apart from, other people in life is they're following their dream and they really set their mind to something and they did it. So that's essentially what this is for. I'll get better and better and better, hopefully, at this podcasting thing the longer we go and we do it. But I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself. So if you don't know, again, my name is Remington Cartee. I've been a musician now since 2018. And so it's really ramped up over the last 3 or 4 years, playing shows here and there. So that's been my passion. That's been something I've wanted to do since I was a kid. It was something that I got into from the time I was around 10 years old. I started playing guitar and started singing since I probably came out of the womb, to be honest with you. So it was just something that naturally I gravitated towards. It wasn't something that I always thought I could do, that I would be able to do, because thinking that you can make a living off of music is kind of a hard thing to do. And the time I've put into it has shown that, you will go up and down and have those moments where you do have struggles and you do worry about whether or not you'll be able to cover your next month's rent or whatever. And that does happen. And that's part of owning your own business, running your own business, and doing this thing. And once I've had to take on part-time jobs, there's been times I had 3 and 4 jobs just trying to make it work. And, you do that. You go through your season of working your tail off and then, finding your way back to doing what you really, truly love. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's people who set out to, do what they're passionate about, and it doesn't work out immediately, and a lot of people give up. And you can't do that. You can't just give up on it if it's something that you really want. If it's something you really want, you have to stick to it, and you will go through the ups and the downs. You will have that, and that's just business for you. That's just how things work, especially in a business of like entertainment. There's certain times of the year it's really, really hard to get booked in certain areas. It's just how it goes, and you have to learn those patterns so that when you are getting to that point where you're going to be facing that, you can prepare yourself. And it may take you a little time to figure that out, because it does suck to feel like you have to go get a part-time job or work for somebody else temporarily or whatever it is to try to make that work. And you may not get it the first time. You may not figure it out the first time. And, that's okay. That's all right. Don't ever let somebody tell you where you're at isn't where you should be. Like anybody that's in the same realm of what you're doing could have had a different success story. So this podcast isn't meant to be like, hey, you should have this done by this time, and if you don't, then you're probably on the wrong path. That's not what this is for. This is to tell you there's other options, right? There's other things that you can do other than what you're currently doing if you really have a dream and you have a passion to want to follow something. Especially if you can see other people are making money doing that thing, you can too. And I don't want anybody to ever tell themselves that they can't, because you absolutely can. This podcast is meant to be real. It's meant to be raw. It's not to be sugarcoating of anything. I expect when I have some guests eventually, hopefully soon, that they are very straightforward and they are very honest about their struggles and their ups and their downs. And, you'll hear me say ups and downs a lot because that's a lot of it. And when most people experience that down, they don't come back from it. I myself have gone through those downs and almost quit and almost gotten out of everything for myself and decided, oh, I want to go just seek the safety of working for somebody else. But the thing is, there's a lot of big corporations that don't care about their employees, and that's just part of it. Like they bring you in, and you're just a number on the time clock, and you're expendable, you're replaceable, and you could give 20 years and then get laid off, and that's just part of business sometimes for these big corporations. You don't always get the opportunity to get to retirement. Like that's been true for a lot of people. So when you work for yourself, you have the opportunity to control that a little better. You have the ability to retire earlier sometimes. So working for yourself is definitely the way that's my go-to, like now that I've been doing it this long, it's really hard for me to decide to work for anybody else. I'm probably just rambling. Honestly, I didn't really write a script for this. Again, this is just real and raw. This is just me talking to you guys. But again, my purpose for this is to talk to people who wanted to go out and earn a living off of themselves. They wanted to believe in themselves. They wanted to, do what they could to make themselves successful. Hopefully when I have other folks to talk to, conversation just kind of flows. We can talk about anything they want to. But it's just more or less getting to know these people that have that drive and have that dream of working for themselves. And so that's just part of it. I'd love to get more into my story about music. So without further ado, let's talk more about that. So for me, my music journey started in, like I said, like 2018. I was playing maybe one-off gigs here and there. Like it wasn't like I had a full-time schedule by any means. And I remember the first show I ever played, I don't remember the name of the place. But I think the place has since, I think it caught on fire and burned down. They didn't even pay me. I think they did pay me. But I think they gave me like $50 because I played like 2 or 3 hours. They gave me like $50 and it was on their night where they had like a steak night. And so I got $50 and a steak for playing a show. And at the time, I thought that was awesome. I thought I'm living it up now. I got all this attention on me, and, that was cool, whatever. But even in doing that, I still wasn't at the point where I was like, oh man, I want to do this all the time. It was just, I had this thing I'd been doing for 8 years at that point, playing guitar and singing, and somebody said, hey, do you want to get on stage? And I was like, yeah. So I took that opportunity and then didn't really, think much else about it. Around that same time was, I was doing different careers, trying to figure out what I wanted to do because it was, a couple years after high school. I'd been out for about 4 years. I had worked at a factory that manufactured cars for about 3.5 years, roughly, I think. And then I went through a divorce and trying to make the court dates and everything. And it made it where I got fired because I wasn't reliable. And that's just the facts of it. I'm replaceable and there's people waiting for that job. So they realized I was not doing my best performance and, life is life. And anyways, they ended up cutting me out with a phone call. They called me one day and just told me, I didn't have to come back and asked me if I needed anything out of my locker, which at that time, all I really kept in my locker was steel-toed shoes. So I was like, no, I'm good. I don't really need anything. But, that's kind of a weird way to fire somebody. Like you could have, waited till I came in on my next shift and told me face to face or something, but whatever. So after that, I was just kind of free falling, I guess, more or less through life. And, I just started trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So, I got to where I was doing some life insurance at one point and, like I said, just trying different things out, which they didn't really work all that great. And then I found myself, in law enforcement, which is another thing I always wanted to do since I was a kid. And I did that for not even a year. And then some things happened in my personal life. My brother got killed back in 2019. And when my brother passed away, it changed my entire plan for my life. I had to take a hard look at myself and figure out if I was happy with what I was doing, where I was currently at in life. I was dating a girl at the time that I wasn't really happy being with because of my own personal stuff. It had nothing to really do with her. It was just me personally just not being in a good place at that time in my life. And so I get to a point where I'm scrambling, trying to figure out what to do. I start kind of going through the same cycle of looking for stuff to do. I found myself landed on a maintenance job where I was traveling around working on a lot of different types of buildings. I got pretty good at, replacing water heaters and working on HVAC systems and, just general repair type stuff. And, I enjoyed doing that. But the guy I worked for at the time, he kind of put me in a position where I was in a supervisory type of role. And I was relatively still kind of new, even after the two and a half years I was with him. Still really new to the whole maintenance thing. Like I wasn't an expert in anything by any means, but he had people calling me, asking me questions, trying to figure out if, if what they were doing was correct and stuff like that. And I tried to help them the best I could, but the things I was good at, I was good at. And when people would ask me a question, if I could answer it, I would help them. And, but I wasn't getting rewarded for that. I wasn't getting the extra pay of helping other people while I'm also trying to do my job. And then the guy I worked for decided that he wanted me to start lying to the customer in order to get more money. At that point, I had to kind of tell him no. But a lot less nicely than just saying no. I've very much explained to him that I have way more integrity than to lie to these people I'm face to face with, because he didn't even live in the state that I was working in. And he wanted me to lie to the faces of these people or get on the phone and call the people above them and lie to them about what was happening when I just wasn't going to do that. And so once I decided I wouldn't lie for him, me and his relationship kind of got destroyed, and he found every reason he could to fire me. Well, once he fired me, I was happy to go because I didn't want to be pressured to lie for any reason to get more money out of people. That's just not who I am. So after that whole incident, again, I went back to scrambling, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with life. And, I was just picking stuff up here and there. And, I didn't really have things figured out. Then one of my friends, and a cousin of mine, he talked to one of the local bars and was going to host an open mic. Well, for whatever reason, he was like, I want you to help me. So he brought me in on it. And me and him started hosting open mics on Tuesday or Wednesday nights. I don't really remember which one it was, but just kind of middle of the week open mic. And so I was perfectly happy to be a part of it. But this was my first, real testament of being on stage week to week to week. Because most of the time we would open the show and do our couple songs, and then people would want us to play with them when they came up and sing along with them, or, just be up on stage with them to make them feel more comfortable. So we would. And then it would just kind of turn into jam sessions, and it was really, really fun. We really had some good times doing that. And within that, I found that I really did enjoy doing music. So then I started kind of going out to some of the local places and just trying to figure out how to book music for myself. I didn't know what the heck I was doing at all. So I just kind of started going out to some of the local breweries. I was already in these places a lot. So all I had to do was go talk to the people I was already talking to that owned the bars and whatever, the bartenders that were there, and try to get my foot in the door. And so that ended up working out for me. And I started building up a clientele. And yeah, just to cut a long story short, just for the sake of time, I built up a pretty good set of clients in South Carolina, where I was at the time, and figuring out exactly what it was to be up on stage and to run your own music business. And so, I got to where I was playing 3 and 4 shows a weekend. And then I did that for, I don't know, 3 years in South Carolina. And then I ended up moving to Charlotte when I met my wife. And once I moved to North Carolina, there was a lot more opportunity here. So when I moved to Charlotte, it kind of was at a really great time for where I was at in my career, because I was still trying to get over that hump. Even though I had a decent amount of clients, I was still trying to get over that hump of like people knowing who I was. Just so when I reached out to a place, they weren't just like, okay, there's just another guy. Like, I wanted people to recognize my name a little bit. Just helps get more bookings, just like any business. You get your name out there, and then you try to book more jobs and gigs because people know more about who you are and can actually find things about you and read reviews or whatever. So when I moved to Charlotte, my wife now, but at the time, she was my girlfriend, she would really kind of jump in and help me reach out to places en masse. So we were just sending out emails, messages on Instagram, Facebook, wherever we could find to try to book. And then, I've worked with several different, you have bookers for these places, and they may book for several different bars in the area. So you work with these bookers, and they get you in these places, and they'll take a cut of some sort, whether they take theirs off the top or you pay them after you get paid. I've dealt with all of it. Some of these people are great at their job, and they're good to work with, and, you get along with them just fine. Others of them are very scammy, very shady. They hide their, what you're truly making, what they're ranking off of the top of you. For anybody in the music business, if you're working with anybody that's booking gigs for you, make sure you see the gross of what y'all are getting paid and what you're netting. And make sure nobody ever takes advantage of you if they say you're making one number and you have no idea what they're truly making on top of that. Especially if they're booking for multiple bars and each bar has vastly different budgets. I get that. But if they're within the same range and within the same area, the same type of size, the same type of plays, they probably have about the same type of budget. Relatively. So keep that stuff in mind if you're ever in that position. If what they're telling you doesn't make sense, it's probably because it's not supposed to, and they're hiding something, and you just need to get more information. And if they're not willing to share that information with you, they're probably doing something kind of scammy, right? So just keep that in mind if you're working with anybody doing that kind of work or that type of business. On the flip side of that, I have found working with a larger booking agency, I've gotten fortunate enough to be selected for that. They got me more into the private sector and, doing more commercial events. And that's a fun side of things to be in, especially from a musician's standpoint. Those are the gigs that pay the best. Those are the gigs that give you the most recognition. Those are the gigs that put you in front of audiences who truly care to hear you. Because honestly, I've been booked at a lot of places where people look at me like I got 3 heads while I'm trying to play music to them, because that's not what they came there for. They're there for the food. They're there for the drinks. They could care less about live music. Now, you'll have 1 or 2 people in the crowd who are having a good time with it, but maybe 50 people there could have cared less that you were there. And you may get their attention with 1 or 2 songs or whatever it may be, but that's not what they're there for. The private sector, that's what they're there for. They hired you because they wanted to promote the fact that they were going to have live music, so more people were excited and interested in the event or whatever it may be. So that's the contrast and the difference I've seen between everyday bar gigs and, going into the private sector. So I've gotten to a point in my career, now that we're back to modern day, and I probably skipped over a bunch of stuff, but to be honest, I don't want to bore you with all the details, because as this podcast goes and I talk to other folks, I'm sure a lot more things are going to come out about, my life and, as just in general conversation, just things that I share with our guests or ways I can connect with them or whatever it is. Just to build rapport and to share life stories or wherever the conversation may lead. So I don't want to bore you with all the details now. But now that we're in modern day, currently I do still try to book stuff for myself through bars and restaurants, but I really am trying to get out of that sector just because it does feel tedious some days trying to work with bars and restaurants that A, don't have the budget, or B, you go and you play and the people you're playing in front of don't really care. So I try to stick to bars or restaurants that have a regular rotation of live music, like 2 or 3 days a week, or they do heavily promote the music on a certain day. Because if you go to a certain bar or restaurant and they have music, but it's not something that they really promote a whole lot, people could care less that you're there. I'm going to be honest with you. But again, you might can get their attention, a couple of songs. You may find that they're interested halfway through your set, and then towards the end of your set, they've really gotten involved and really started liking it. So every place is different. But for me personally, I try to stick to the places where they have a decent budget, because that usually means they have a good crowd, they have a built-in crowd. If you're playing for a door, you have to make sure that you have a good following and that they're going to come out and see you. And that's just not the case necessarily for every musician. It's just not. Try to find your way into those bigger paying gigs. Do network. Learn who is a good connection, who's not a good connection. Just because they do the same thing you do does not mean they're a good connection for you, right? They could have burned a lot of bridges and now you're hanging out with that person and people are looking at you differently. So keep that in mind. And those people may also turn you on to other people in that industry who they've connected with who aren't the best people in that industry, and they all hang out together because they've already burnt the bridges with everybody else. So just keep that stuff in mind. Be vigilant. Stay focused, and you'll be all right. That's what I try to do. I try to do private events. I try to play bigger events. And now I'm working on getting my public adjuster's license, and I'll be doing my business with that. Just because I am looking to slowly ease out of doing so many bar gigs, and with that, I have to make up that income. Getting a license in something that I'm passionate about, is the next step in my life. Whatever that turns into. And I'll still be able to do the private gigs and pick that kind of stuff up, and that's kind of what I'm after is, being a lot more in control of the things I say yes to, and not feeling like I have to say yes to every gig that comes across my, in front of me, just because I feel like I have to in order to pay my bills. And I've had moments in my life where that was the case, where I could turn stuff down and say no, or say I didn't want to, do a certain thing. And that's where I want everybody to get with business, where you can turn stuff down if you don't want to do it, or you don't have the capacity to do it, or you don't have the energy to do it, or whatever it may be, turn it down. I want everybody to be able to do that. I want everybody to be able to work for themselves and decide their schedule and decide when they want to do things and what they want to do. And not everybody can, and I know that. Some people don't have that drive. Some people don't have the ability. Some people don't have the financial side of it to really feel like they can, free up some of their time in order to chase that. Maybe they're working 4 jobs already and, they just don't have time to take on another thing. I get that. I really do. I've been there and I've lived it. But I had to make the decision, as scary as it was, no matter what happened, I wanted to chase that. And once I did, and once I chased it, I found out that it was a lot easier once you build that momentum, And I'm still always looking for business opportunities, investment opportunities, whatever it may be. And so, I keep my eyes open for that stuff, because as many streams of income as you can create for yourself, the more wealthy you're going to end up in life. And life's not all about money, but unfortunately this world operates off of how much capital you have. And the only way to get free of the system is to create your own financial stability and to create how much money you're really generating month to month, and not selling yourself for an hourly wage, especially when you're only getting paid $7, $8, $9, $10 an hour and you're working 40 hours a week, if you think about how many hours that is, when you get taxes taken out, like, you're not making that much. And today, with everything being so much more expensive, that makes it very, very hard to live and to feel like you can actually step out of that and pursue something else that you're passionate about, whether that be art, whether that be music, whether that's some business you want to start. You want to have a food truck. You want to open a restaurant. You want to be a chiropractor and open your own practice. You want to be a doctor and open your own practice. You want to be a pharmacist and open your own pharmacy. That stuff. Some of that stuff takes time, and some of it takes school, and some of it takes certain abilities. You might want to start your own construction company, your own lawn care business, your whatever. You may want to start building something or invent something and put that in production and start selling it and promoting it and all of that. But again, that all takes time, and I get that. But it's never too late to start, and it's never too risky to ever bet on yourself. And if it's something you truly want to do, you'll find the time to do it, and you'll find the way to do it, and you'll find small ways to start incorporating that into your life. And that's what you have to do, as scary as that is sometimes. And as much as you may not feel like you have the free time, you may have to create it somehow and give up other things that aren't benefiting you and that aren't making you happy necessarily and that aren't getting you closer to the goal that you have for yourself in life. And for anybody who blames other people for not getting ahead in life, that's just a sad way to think. Like, you have to go out and do it yourself. I've been rock bottom and had nobody to drag me out. The only person to drag me out was me. That was it. That was the only person there for me. I've had that in my life. You have to find your way to get to where you want to go. And sometimes it's hard. And sometimes you're going to go through those ups and downs I've mentioned. And when you're in those downs, you can't just quit and give up and never look at it again. Even if you do quit and give up and walk away from it temporarily, be willing to go back and try it again, because who knows, it may be different the next time. You may have better success with it. When I started my music thing, TikTok was just very, very new to coming out. When I first really started picking up on what I was doing, I'm not good with social media. I've still, to this point, not been the best at TikTok. I'm still not the best with Instagram. I'm still not good with Facebook. My wife most of the time runs my Instagram and posts stuff for me or gets on to me about making sure I post stuff or whatever it may be. You have to, nowadays, they tell you have to do Instagram, you have to do all the social media, and maybe that's true. I could care less to do it. I try to promote myself as much as I can, but I'm also not trying to rocket myself to stardom necessarily. If there was a big time record deal that came my way, I would consider it. But the reality is, there's a lot of people looking to get record deals, and there's a lot of things you have to do in order to get that record deal. And sometimes you have to have money to put forward to get that record deal. You have to invest a lot of money in yourself before you're ready to get that record deal. And if you're lucky enough to go viral on one of these social media platforms, there's a lot you got to be prepared for if they do give you that record deal that you're probably not used to. Especially if you've never performed a live show in your life. That's a thing to consider, That's a lot of pressure. There's people that have success stories doing it. So, anyway. You can do anything you set your mind to. That's what this podcast is about. Putting yourself out there, working on yourself, getting yourself to a place where you can do for you what makes you happy. And I want to talk to other people who are doing what makes them happy, whatever that may be. Even if you are still partially working for somebody and you have a business that you're trying to do, I'm proud of you. I'm proud that you're doing that. That's how everybody starts. It's rare that people quit everything in their life and jump in with both feet. There are people that have done it and that have been successful, but that is terrifying. And you have to prepare yourself fully for that. And most of the time, if you don't have a backing by having a partner that's also there working with you and that has a job or whatever it is, that kind of a thing can be really, really terrifying for you. So that's not for everybody. My advice to folks is ease yourself in, dip your toe in the water, figure out what it is you want to do, figure out what your clientele will be. and then proceeding forward with that. Whatever the type of business it is, whether that is art, whether that is lawn care, whether that is construction, whether that is being a musician, whether that is investing your money into the stock market, or whatever it is, small steps. Small steps, have a plan, and you'll be successful. And I hope that message gets relayed through all the guests that I'll bring on, that'll be a consistent message, that they didn't just jump in and it magically worked out for them, and they didn't really have to work hard for it, and they didn't have to do. I doubt anybody's going to say that. So it is small steps. There are a lot of learning things that you have to figure out. Even once you start going into it, you'll learn, the good and the bad of it, the ugly sides of it, and the happy sides of it, and the pretty sides of it. But that's enough of my rambling. I appreciate y'all checking out the Beneath the Calling podcast. Hopefully we'll have a guest soon, and hopefully you guys will be back to check it out. Sorry if this was really long-winded. I'm not going to try to edit out a bunch of it, but if you do see a lot of cuts and edits, just understand it was because I was rambling or it didn't make sense or whatever. I'm new to this podcasting thing, but I want to bring you the best podcast that I can, because I feel like there's a lot of value I can bring, and helping other people also talk about their dreams and their ambitions in life and the things they've been able to accomplish. So hopefully that'll help you guys that are listening, to inspire you, to keep you moving forward in the right direction, to help you change your mindset, whatever it may be. But hopefully it's all positive. And yeah, that's all I'm here for. If you guys got any questions, make sure you let me know. I'm going to set up an email for this podcast. I'll probably have a TikTok page at some point. Or you can just message me directly on Facebook or Instagram or whatever if you want to be on the podcast and you want to come share your story. Reach out. Talk to me. Everything, all my socials can be found at Remington Cartee or at Remington Cartee Music. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys and hearing back from you and getting some guests on here and hearing their life stories. So yeah, without further ado, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for listening to the Beneath the Calling podcast. We'll see you next time. All right.